So tonight we present Zen Honeycutt from Moms Across America. Thank you, Zen.
All right. Aloha, my new friends. I get to say that here. Thank you. And it really means something. And I'm so grateful to be here and be with all of you. Thank you for the honor and privilege of your time and attention this evening. I know there were a lot of other places you could have been this evening, and you're here with us together. Thank you so much. I'm truly touched to be among the distinguished guests that the SHAKA Movement has brought to your beautiful island. So thank you so much for that privilege as well. I first want to acknowledge the tremendously inspiring SHAKA Movement team members, Beth, Joe, Marcella, Bruce, Satya, Christina Fisher, and the 5 citizens. Thank you so much for inspiring such an incredible movement. I also want to thank the activists who are devoting their lives to a healthy future. Babes Against Biotech, Maui Tomorrow, Moms Hui, and all of the supporters who made a difference to have the Maui ban on GMOs pass. We stand with you to uphold the ban. Thank you so much for getting that ban. It was just so inspiring for the mainland. On the mainland, we are continuously moved and encouraged by your dedication and activism. When we see you marching, you give us more than hope. You give us a new breath of determination. When we hear of your lawsuits and initiatives, you renew our faith in humanity. You may be the ground zero for GMOs, but I see you as the womb of love and empowerment. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. I want you to know it truly matters that you've been marching and protesting and speaking up and knocking on door to door and meeting with each other. It matters to the mainland, and it matters to the rest of the world. There are times when your good news has been the only thing that keeps us from just complete despair in the United States. So I really hope you understand how important it is what you're doing. For the past 3 days, I've interviewed dozens of residents of Maui, and I'm clear, after meeting so many of you, why your initiative won. You are loving, brilliant, eclectic, and a very committed community, and I'm very honored that you're sharing your time here with me. Your experiences are imperative to be heard by your community, by policymakers, and by the mainland to acknowledge and to understand. Your experiences are crucial for the global community to heed. What is happening to you is happening and will happen further around the world if we don't hear you, learn from you, and take action. I personally am committed to doing whatever it takes, like many of you. Now, it's not ideal for me to leave my 12, 10, and 7-year-old boys home for a week, and I want to acknowledge my husband and our 3 child care providers that have pitched in to take care of them. But I know, and they know, that I do this because I love them and because I want a healthy future for them. See, it's not enough for my family to eat organic food. My son's future spouses are out there somewhere, and they are likely eating GMO food. And we want them to have the experience of the profound love that it is to have one's own healthy child someday. But we know now, with the impacts of GMOs, glyphosate, and toxic chemicals, that they include autism, allergies, autoimmune disease, diabetes, cancer, infertility, sterility, and miscarriage. So it's not looking likely. We must alter that future, and we can. When I meet people like you, I am sure that we will. Tonight, I'm committed that you leave empowered in the area of health and our food supply and what we can do about it. Many of you are empowered, and I'm not here to tell you how to do anything. I truly respect and honor your country, and I'm here in hopes that whatever we have to share, that we may grow together stronger, as your stories are helping me and Moms Across America grow stronger. First of all, I want to get a feel for who's in the room. How many of you It's a little bit dark in here, but how many of you are moms or dads? How many of you are parents? Oh, wow, great bunch of you. Awesome. And how many of you are, well, you're included too, but how many are grandparents? How many grandparents do we have here? Awesome. And healthcare providers, how many of you take care of other people, doctors or healthcare providers? We have healthcare providers in the room? Okay, awesome, welcome. And how about activists? How many of you consider yourself activists? Oh, great bunch of you, awesome, okay. And how about people who are here to find out about GMOs and the health issues, perhaps, somewhat for the first time? Anybody? Some new? Great, thank you for your courage, awesome. How about employees of the chemical companies? Anybody here from the chemical companies? Any hands? No? Okay, maybe not. Okay, how about people who live in the affected areas? Okay, wait, can somebody get a picture of that? Okay, great. We just want to know how many of you came and we heard, that heard about this and came here. Thank you so much for coming. We appreciate that. Now a different question, a little bit tougher, but how many of you love someone who has food allergies? Okay. And look around while we do this. How many of you love someone with autism? And people, let's see. And how about, or that includes autism and ADHD. How about that? Yeah, a lot of people. How about asthma? Oh my goodness, okay. Yeah, and autoimmune disease, that includes like lupus and psoriasis and eczema, autoimmune, all of those, yeah, lupus, okay. Diabetes. Holy mackerel. Okay, obesity. A lot of people. And cancer. And how many of you have raised your hand more than once? Oh, sorry. You're getting pictures, right, Mark? Okay. Oh, so, and I need to ask, was it like this 20 years ago? No. Yeah. You don't even need to be an elder, right, to know that. It was not like this 20 years ago. So what has changed? The food has changed, right? And the chemical farming has changed in our water. So we're here to turn this situation around, and I want to acknowledge the courage it takes to come out and to find out more about this very difficult information to digest, pun intended. And we may be shocked, you may be shocked and dismayed by what I'm about to share with you tonight, but my intention is to leave you empowered. So we can begin the slideshow here. Great. So this is about your right to health. And I'm going to begin with my story, with my 3 boys. Yeah, Ben is 12, and Bodie is 10, and Bronson is now 7. He just lost 2 of his teeth this week. So he must not think that the tooth fairy is mommy, because I'm here. So they all have food allergies. They have allergies to gluten and wheat. Not all of them have all of these allergies, but they have these allergies collectively. Gluten, wheat, dairy, nuts, tree nuts, peanuts, eggs, and carrageenan, which is a seaweed food thickener that's in just about everything that kids like hot dogs and ice cream, and there's different kinds of milks and sauces and things like that. Now, my husband and I never had any of these allergies, and I began to wonder what was happening and what was going on. But for a very long time, I was simply resigned. I was just going to have to put up with it, was just going to have to avoid these foods, and then Thanksgiving dinner happened. I was at Nana's and Papa's house, my husband's parents, and we were sitting around with about 18 or 25 people, and I look at my son, who was then about 5, my eldest son, and he looked very, very ill all of a sudden. And I thought, this is so inconvenient. He must have the flu. And I excused him to go to the kids' room in the back of the house, and in a few minutes we hear him cry out. So my husband and I run to the room, and we find him covered in red welts. He looks like a raspberry, his torso, his neck, his face. And I realize, and I ask questions, that somebody put pecans in the stuffing, even though we made it clear to them that he had a nut allergy from previous testing. And so I run and get the EpiPen. My husband jabs in his leg, but he's too distraught to pull it out, so I pull it out, and blood spurts across the room, and everybody's screaming. And we run and get him in the car and get him to the hospital. And while he's laying in the bed with IVs in his arms, He's looking at me, and his eyes are saying, "Mommy, do something." And there's simply nothing I can do but pray. And that feeling of helplessness is not something any parent should ever have, especially over food. And so, thank God my son did not pass that night. We did have other allergic reactions like that. And for a very long time, for a couple of years, all I did was just avoid food and pray and try to get by. I was resigned and doubtful that anything else could ever happen. But then my son got an allergy around his mouth that lasted on and off for weeks. And I realized that something was really going on here. And I began to investigate. There's a saying that goes, "A worried mom does better research than the FBI." So I became that mom, and I began to research, and I found out that Americans eat the most GMOs in the world and have the worst health, that GMOs are in 75% of America's processed food. Now, this slide's a little old, so there may be more Hawaiian papaya now that's GMO, right? But somewhere between 80-something and 90-something percent of soy and cotton and canola and corn and sugar beets are GMO, and some zucchini and crooked neck squash. There's now also potatoes. There's many other GMOs that are coming onto the market, apples as well. Clearly, I need to update this slide. But so it's a huge portion of GMOs in our stores, and I felt incredibly betrayed that I had been feeding my son GMOs for 9 years. There were no labels. I had no choice about this. I did not know. And I began to research even more and found out that they are genetically engineered to either be a pesticide or resist herbicides. Now, this is the majority of the two of them, and I'm going to explain one more as well. The first one is where the DNA from one species is injected into the DNA of a completely unrelated species, and it's spread throughout every cell of that plant via a bacteria or a virus. Now, that process alone is scary enough for me, right? But in addition, they inject, for instance, say corn with a toxin from a dead carcass of a caterpillar, sounds appetizing, right, into the corn, and they engineer it to constantly reproduce more toxin, so it becomes a little toxin factory. And so when the bug eats that corn, its stomach explodes because of the constantly reproducing toxin. Now, that toxin is used in organic farming, but it's not engineered to constantly reproduce more toxin. So the genetic engineering of that is harmful to the bugs. It makes that corn a registered pesticide by the EPA, and this is what we're eating. In addition, they genetically engineer all kinds of foods to resist herbicides, the majority of them. And that's what is being tested mostly here in Maui. And these herbicides kill all of the weeds around the plant and leave the food that we are eating alive. And unfortunately, these herbicides do not wash off, they do not dry off, and they do not cook off. Now, the third GMO, which is not featured on here, but it is done pretty much the same way, a desired trait is put into the food, and it is put in via promoters or silencers. So it's like a recipe, right? So you have a cookie recipe and you're putting in chocolate chip. Well, the recipe, the ingredients sort of need to read that. So these promoters say, you know, more redder tomato or greener lettuce or more vitamin A. Or they could be silencers, which would shut down mechanisms in the plant to not do certain things. Now, as a parent, my issue with this is we don't know if these promoters or silencers are waking genes up or silencing mechanisms in our children's body to no longer function, like say no longer to be able to detox or no longer to be able to make manganese or process manganese or certain things like that. So I am very concerned about this third type of GMO, which is not widely spoken about, and it's called RNA, and they are going to try to sneak it through without labeling because they say it's not a typical GMO, which is either engineered to resist herbicides or to be a pesticide. So, but essentially most GMOs are a chemical delivery system to humans, and we are ingesting more chemicals than ever before in the history of mankind. So the majority of the GMOs, 80%, are engineered to resist Roundup, which is glyphosate. Glyphosate is now generic. It's in over 700 chemicals used around the world. The EPA list is on our website, and it shows 160 foods which are allowed to have glyphosate levels, residues, far and above over what has been shown to destroy our gut bacteria. So just to give you an example, sweet potatoes are allowed to have 3 parts per million, regular potatoes 5 parts per million, tea 7 parts per million, some corn 3.5 parts per million, and these are far above the 0.1 parts per billion that it takes to destroy our gut bacteria. And oil that is used in restaurants mostly, 40 parts per million. So Roundup is now used as a drying agent on non-organic foods as well, and we attribute this to part of the increase. There was a 73% increase of the use of Roundup in 2013, and hundreds of superweeds now resist Roundup. So we believe that's the increase, the reason for the increased use. Now, I'm not going to go into the farming practices, how this is detrimental to the soil and to the water. I'll leave that to a farmer, but you can imagine what repetitive exposure to toxic chemicals can do to the soil and the microbes and to our earth and water. Glyphosate's used on backyards and streets, on our food, trees, even waterways in some areas. Now, what is glyphosate? It is the active chemical ingredient in Roundup. It is a patented antibiotic, and that means it kills the gut bacteria, and it has been specifically shown to not only kill the beneficial gut bacteria first, but it allows the proliferation of the pathogenic gut bacteria. We have millions of different kinds of bacteria in our gut, and many of them are very, very important for, well, all of them are very important for our existence. But the important thing to know about this pathogenic gut bacteria is that on the outer walls is something called lipopolysaccharides. And the lipopolysaccharides' job is to tell the vagus nerve, which is in the gut, that signals the brain. It's the nerve that goes from the gut to the brain. It signals that nerve to tell the microglia cells, the immunomicroglia cells in the brain, to go on attack. It's like, bad guys, go on attack, right? So the microglia cells go on attack by producing glutamate. And glutamate is an excitotoxin which actually excites the brain neurons and can kill them. So we believe this is why many doctors and scientists, which I have the pleasure to speak to quite frequently, believe this is why a child will suddenly develop a tic or a stammer or lose focus in school or start banging his head against the refrigerator repeatedly and having autism symptoms because those brain neurons have died. And this is also why we believe that there's a sudden onset of dementia in people in their 40s and 50s in America now, and Alzheimer's is just, through the roof. So this is why the gut bacteria is so incredibly important, and why when children take out the foods that are exposing them to glyphosate and they repair their gut bacteria, they immediately see improvements in their focus and behavior. Number 2, glyphosate's a chelator, and a chelator means it holds or makes unavailable the vital nutrients of any living thing it touches. Now, you need vitamins and minerals to prevent cancer. You need vitamins and minerals to grow and to develop and to be healthy. So it's very important. It's also been shown to cause DNA mutations as well. Glyphosate is defined on the EPA fact sheet as a reproductive effector. That's a different way to say endocrine disruptor. And endocrine disruptor means that it halts or harms the development of a growing fetus. And it can also cause liver and kidney damage. And there's been over 20,000 young men that work on the fields that are sprayed with glyphosate, the cane fields in South America, that have died from liver and kidney damage. And glyphosate's also been banned in Sri Lanka because hundreds of thousands of people there have been dying from liver and kidney damage as well. So you can see why I would be extremely concerned that glyphosate's being sprayed on your sugarcane fields very, very close to your schools and homes. So why moms across America? Well, first of all, moms started this, and we would love to have started dads across America, but we're doing this historically. Keep in mind that historically, moms have determined the longevity of a culture through careful food preparation. If you think about it, men have historically, they would are the ones to protect and provide. However, women have been the ones to decide what a tribe ate. And if they did not trust their instincts and fed the tribe poison berries or rotten food, the tribe would perish. And for the past 20 years, without GMO labels, moms have not been able to trust their instinct, and therefore the health of our nation has declined. The reality of health in America is that at the top 17 most developed countries, the USA is last in health. Of the top developed countries in the world, the USA is number 1 for infant deaths on the first day of life. This is not something you are going to hear about in the media. We actually have 50% more babies that die on the first day of life than all of the industrialized nations combined. This is tragic, and you can find this, it's the Save the Children report. 1 out of 2 of our children have a chronic illness in America. 1 out of 2 American males and 1 out of 3 females are expected to get cancer in America today. This is like we are at war. Could you imagine if 50% of our males were being killed by some other country? This is astronomical. This is absolutely unacceptable. Pesticides are also linked to a loss of IQ. American IQ has dropped 7 points since GMOs. That may not sound like a lot, but that means instead of 6 million people that are mentally impaired, that are not capable, we now have 9 million. You know, 50% of our education budget is spent on special education in America. What is it going to be like 10 years from now, 20 years from now? And how does the rest of the population, what's the impact on the rest of the population for that? Now, here's the proposed collateral damage of all this on our children and on our people. And I say collateral damage because when chemical warfare was no longer popular or accepted, the chemical companies needed a new market for their chemicals. So they declared war on bugs and weeds. And they decided that it would be easier for the farmers to farm with chemicals and convinced the farmers to do so. So what I see is that our children are the collateral damage of this war. Now, what we're seeing is that as an endocrine disruptor, what's happening in our world is that we now have a 30% failure to conceive in America. There are fertility clinics where there used to be 1, there are now 14, all across America, right? And that is an inconceivable number of miscarriages, of babies that are lost each year. Now, it's also an antibiotic, and what we're seeing is that 24.7 million children have food intolerances. That means leaky gut. Those are holes in their small intestines. Food is leaking out through their small intestines. The body sees that undigested particle as a foreign invader, and they attack it. And that is the reason for food intolerances and food allergies. And that causes inflammation, which can lead to Crohn's disease and colitis. And we're seeing a 79% increase in Crohn's disease in children in the past 10 years. Now, this number is only from the hospital outpatient alone. This is not even from pediatricians. This is astronomical. Now, the gut bacteria, this is very important to understand. The gut bacteria is the only, well, I don't want to say the only place. So tryptophan also comes from food, but it's the place where tryptophan is held in the body, okay? And it is also made there. Tryptophan is made there. And when you have tryptophan in the gut, you can then make serotonin and melatonin. Without tryptophan, you can't make serotonin and melatonin. And serotonin is what regulates insulin. So if you can't regulate insulin, what's going to happen? Diabetes. And what do we have? A fourfold increase in teens in the past 10 years. Without serotonin, you also cannot regulate brain disorders, depression, bipolar. You can't sleep well. You get anxiety, right? So we have now 29 million Americans with diabetes and 57.7 million Americans with mental disorders. That's 1 out of 5. That includes our politicians and unfortunately our policemen and our co-pilots and our teachers and our loved ones and our CEOs and everyone else that has close impact with your children that may not know they have mental illness. Now, how are we going to run a country with 1 out of 5 people that are mentally ill? What does that future look like? You know? So, and as a chelator that's causing mineral deficiency, 117.8 million Americans have cancer. Cancer is the #1 or #2 killer of children in America today, depending on the area. This is absolutely unacceptable. Now, what we're also seeing, this just came out November 2nd in Washington Post. This is very, very scary. This is US white males, middle-aged males. This is the death rate that's happening since 1990 to 2010. Right here is where GMOs were introduced. Isn't that interesting? Now, we can't say that this is causation, but GMOs and glyphosate, with all of the things that I just said, how they impact the body, it looks very, very interesting to me that with 75 to 80% of our food being GMOs, that this is where American men are going, and this is where all of the other countries are going. Now, when you also look at what is killing them, here we have poisonings. Now, these are drug overdoses. And these are actual suicides that they know were intentional suicides, but these are drug overdoses. And this is chronic liver disease, and this is diabetes. Now, what happens when you don't have serotonin? You don't feel satiated. You can't feel satisfied. You are more likely to get addicted to drugs. You're going to look for something else to feel happy, right? So there you have poisonings and suicide. You're likely to get more depressed. And chronic liver disease, glyphosate has been proven to impair the liver's ability to detox. And without your healthy flora and gut bacteria, you also cannot digest things like aspartame and genetically modified sugars, the manufacturer made sugars. So the body sends them immediately to the liver. And that's where you get liver cirrhosis. That's why you're seeing children with fatty liver and liver disease. So that is why that's related to GMOs and glyphosate. And then we already mentioned diabetes. Now the cost of diabetes, this doesn't look like very much, but the cost of diabetes is increasing so much that in 12 years, the cost of diabetes will bankrupt the US healthcare budget just from the cost of diabetes alone. It's over $279 billion right now, just for the cost of diabetes. So this is astronomical, what's happening here. Okay, so moms across America, so I decided, and many of us decided to do something about this, and I want to tell you a little bit about how this began. So it was election night for Prop 37, remember that, the labeling campaign in California, thanks to Pam Larry, and I'm sitting in the back of the room, and the coordinator, the leader, was at the front of the room acknowledging everybody for their role. We didn't know yet whether we had won, and she was acknowledging everyone. So I began to think about my role, and I had passed out flyers at the farmers market and posted and emailed a lot of people, and I thought I did pretty good. But then I realized, I'm in the back of the room and she's at the front of the room. I started wondering, why is that? Nothing wrong with it, but it just occurred to me that I didn't take on leadership. I didn't say, I'm going to be the one to transform the food industry, or I'm going to make sure that my town all votes yes, And it just occurred to me that if I had taken on leadership, my actions would have been different. So I began to wonder, what if I did take on that I'm the one to transform the food industry, And so a few minutes later, I found out that we lost. And I'm sitting in the car, and I'm crying with my family, and my my eldest, then 9-year-old son said, well, Mom, even Star Wars took 6 episodes. And I said, yeah, and they had Yoda, And so I realized then that maybe it was just time for a new episode, like you're all talking about right now. And I realized maybe it was time for me to take on leadership. So I started to ask the question, how could I raise awareness with as many people as possible in the shortest amount of time? And I thought about the tipping point, Jeffrey Smith, right, reaching a lot of people. And I thought about Robin O'Brien's great concept, patriotism on a plate. And I put those two together and came up with 4th of July parades. Because one parade, 3 people deep, 3 spectators deep, for 3 miles equals 49,000 people. It's patriotic, it's family friendly, it's fun. Nobody's rolling up their window because you're shouting at them, right? They want to see you. And you're there with your stroller and red, white, and blue, and you're handing out flyers, here, find out about GMOs. And we've got a big sign that says something moms and GMOs on it, because then people will look at it and they will trust it, right? You can trust a mom. So we did that, and 172 moms in, I believe at the time it might have been 37 states or something like that, the first year, rose up and joined in. This had 200,000 people in this parade, yeah, in Huntington Beach. And these all across, anywhere from 5 to 10 to 15, 30,000 people all across the nation. A lot of this town made that huge, float thing and left it out for days, maybe, I don't know, maybe even a week for other people to read. And these are people, some of them that didn't know each other before, that came together. Really beautiful. And so here we are all across the nation. And since then, we've had over 700 events in all 50 states. We're growing. I mean, we went from a reach on Facebook from 0 to 300,000 a week in the first 4 months. So we're reaching a lot of people, and we really appreciate all of the sharing and support that you all do with posts. They've changed the algorithms on Facebook, so it's much harder to reach people now, but we're doing it anyway, right? So, so in reaching all of those people, we started to hear testimonials. Our kids are getting better when they get off GMOs and eat organic. And so we started to record those. And I'll tell you a few of them. This is my son, my testimonial. After going GMO-free for 4 months, my eldest son, who was getting that carrageenan rash that you can see around his mouth, after 4 months, it was barely perceptible. You can see a very faint line underneath his mouth. This is after the first day of exposure. And what this shows, now most people would think that rash is bad, right? You want to slap a cream on it and make it go away. But that rash is actually the body's way of explaining to you, of expressing to you that there's inflammation going on in the gut. It's a very good thing, actually, because inflammation in the gut can lead to stomach cancer, colitis, Crohn's disease, and all of that. So I believe we're preventing him from getting stomach cancer because his allergic reactions have greatly diminished, if not completely gone away. He's no longer allergic to, he was also allergic to mushrooms before, and his nut allergy has gone from a 19 down to a 0.2. He no longer has a life-threatening allergy. This is such a huge relief to me, And I want to point out that he did this. I stood for him, but there was a day when I looked him in the eye and I said, Ben, he said first to me, Mom, I wish all my allergies would go away. And in my head I was thinking, that's never going to happen, But then I realized I was being resigned and doubtful, and I said, well, I'm committed to being empowering, and I said, well, would you be my partner in doing something about this? Like, would you, if you had to drink green drinks and stuff like that, would you do it? He said yes, and I said, okay, then I promise you're going to get better. And so he is getting dramatically better. He did that. Yeah. And he'll go to Boy Scouts now, and if they go to McDonald's as a treat, he will not eat a thing. Yeah. So, and here's some testimonials this is from Jennifer Lawrence. Her video is on our website. You can see it. She said, I had an awesome team of doctors at the Children's Hospital that could not figure out what was wrong with my daughter, who was getting sick after nearly every meal. The moms posting on Facebook that their children got better when they got off GMOs saved my daughter's life. That day, I went out and bought organic food, and she stopped throwing up. Yeah. Now, obviously, not everybody's going to have this dramatic of a reaction to GMOs, right? Her child has something that was particularly sensitive. So this is sort of like smoking. Some people will have reactions and some won't. However, the difference is that smoking is an option. Eating is not, right? Now, Karen from California told us that her son had daily asthma attacks, needed glasses, and was recommended to be held back a year at school. When she found out about GMOs and switched to organic, his asthma disappeared, he no longer needed glasses, and he's now at the top of his class. And you can attribute that to the inflammation decreasing, right, with the eyesight and everything. And Cindy from Rhode Island has a severely autistic teenage son. She found out about GMOs 2 years ago and went all organic. Her son entered high school this past fall, and not one of his teachers could tell that he was ever autistic. And she's a single mom who makes $40,000, but she made it work, right? And now these two boys have new futures because their moms found out about GMOs and glyphosate. And I say that our country and our world may have a new future because these boys' moms found out about GMOs and glyphosate. Because who knows what they'll invent or contribute to our society. Think about Google, 2 boys, right? So I'm clear, what we're talking about here tonight is not just about Maui or the United States, it's about reinventing a new future for the entire world. This matters. And we're doing this together because the fact is that GMOs and glyphosate are not working. We have a food shortage is a lie. Americans waste 40% of their food, 40% of us are obese, and yet 16 million children go to bed hungry every night. It's not the food that needs to be modified, it's the food industry. You know, the current system is all for the profit of the chemical companies. And many of you may not know this, but these are the companies that they make the chemicals that they spray on the crops, and they also make the pharmaceuticals that are supposed to make us better. Syngenta owns AstraZeneca. Syngenta makes the most pesticides in the world. They also own AstraZeneca, which makes hundreds of pharmaceuticals. DuPont owns Dionesco, which is a probiotic company, the largest probiotic producer in the world. Please find out where your probiotics are being sourced from, okay? So, and Monsanto used to be owned by Pfizer and has shareholders in all kinds of pharmaceuticals, and Bayer, we all know, makes aspirin, and they make pesticides. So now what's happening with our food is a lot of bad news. What's the good news? So you are the good news, and here's some things that we're doing. Glyphosate testing, you just heard that SHAKA is going to be doing a lot of testing. Moms across America is as well. Very soon we'll be able to test for over 150 pesticides, along with Feed the World, 150 pesticides in one test, and also food, and we're conducting other tests as well. So in 2014, because I watched a panel of the opposition that said all these moms have all these testimonials with their kids getting better, and yet they don't have any medical proof. And I thought, okay, so we need to get some evidence, right? And so I bugged a farmer friend of mine for over a year to find a lab that would test for glyphosate. I made calls, I checked with my doctor, I checked with other labs. They would test for other pesticides, but not glyphosate. And I said, but it's the most widely used herbicide in the world. And they said, well, it's considered safe. And I said, well, lead and mercury and asbestos were considered safe at one time too. But we test for that now. Can't you just test for it? So, they couldn't for a long time, but then they did. And so we made citizen funding tested available for urine and water available for the first time in the United States, and breast milk testing available for the first time in the world. And the results were alarming. And I do want to say, because people always wonder as I'm going through this, can I get tested? And yes, you can. And SHAKA will be doing that as well. Also, we have free testing that we're offering available now for a limited time. So if you know any children with cancer, we especially want to give them tests, and children with autism as well. So please apply on our website under Action. The Carisco study showed that the destruction of gut bacteria of chickens, it kills the gut bacteria of the chickens at 0.1 parts per billion, so keep that in mind before you see the results. And 70% of our immune system lies in our gut bacteria. Of course, children are especially susceptible to illness with a weakened immune system. So here's what we found in upstate New York, where their water is supposed to be so great. They had 3 times higher of the levels of glyphosate that it's allowed in Europe. And over in California, this is my water, we had almost the 0.1 parts per billion, it's 0.085, that is shown to destroy gut bacteria. Then the urine test results showed a female college student with cancer at 18.8. Over here is a 4-year-old girl with developmental disabilities at 14.6. And here's my son, my middle-aged son, with the one with the curly hair, at 8.7 parts per billion. This is 8 times higher than is found anywhere in Europe when they did testing a couple years before this in my child. And this was at the same time as a sudden onset of autism symptoms. All of a sudden, he was kicking and screaming and hitting, and his grades dropped from A's to D's. He had that red rash around his mouth, but he did not have a carrageenan allergy. So I was thinking something is going on with his gut, some inflammation. And so his teacher called me and said something's going on with him. So I took him to my doctor, who happened to be an autism doctor because I liked his spaced out vaccine schedule. And he said, I'm going to test him for fungus. And I'm thinking pathogenic gut bacteria. And he tested very, very high for fungus, for Clostridia difficile, for yeast, for bad bacteria, and he had 19 different food intolerances. My doctor said he has leaky gut. He has gut dysbiosis. And I found this very odd because my other 2 children did not test positive for glyphosate at this time. And then I realized, oh, they have gluten intolerances and the middle one did not. So he was eating wheat, and wheat is sprayed with glyphosate as a drying agent, especially in 2013 with that increase of 73% of the use of Roundup. We're thinking this must be it. So I eliminate all of wheat and we, of course, go completely organic. And we did have to treat the fungus in his gut with a $650 a month compound medication with health insurance. And we did introduce probiotics and raw organic sauerkraut, which has 1 trillion good bacteria in 1 tablespoon. And yes, you can get kids to eat it with gold stars and things like that. And we also put in colloidal silver, which helps with the integrity of the gut lining. And he drank his green drinks, and within 6 weeks, we retested him, and his glyphosate levels were no longer detectable, and his autism symptoms were gone. And they have never come back. So I completely believe that the gut is the source of the healing. And if you think about it, I want to tell this story too. I do want to tell a little story about farming. So in a normal crop, when a pest or a blight or a fungus attacks one end of the crop, by the time it gets to the other end of the crop crop is resistant because the microfungi in the soil have communicated with each other and have told the crop to build up resistance. This has even happened from greenhouse to greenhouse. So this microfungi and this communication that's happening in the net, it's like the network, however, in GMO farming is being destroyed by the pesticides and the herbicides. So you have to think that that's happening in our gut as well, right? Not only are the microbes being destroyed, but the network that we have for the microbes to communicate with each other are being destroyed. So when you repair that, you can just repair so much for your body. Okay, so urine. So then we got to breast milk. Now this was shocking because we got 10 moms, 9 out of 10 were all aware of GMOs and glyphosate. There were Moms Across America supporters, but one asked her friend to test for glyphosate, and that was in Florida. That was a nurse that ate conventional American food, and her level was 166 parts per billion. This is astronomical. Now, keep in mind that the other 2 confessed to eating out quite a bit, and these 2, in the most highly sprayed area in America, had been eating organic for between 6 months to 2 years, these 2. And they did not have detectable levels. But keep in mind, though, that the detectable level here is 75 parts per billion. It's quite high because nobody's been testing glyphosate in breast milk, right? So the methodology was just not developed. So this is the detectable level. So all of these other people, mothers, doesn't mean that they don't have glyphosate in their breast milk. It's just not above 75. So we, of course, were extremely upset that these levels are 760 to 1,600 times higher than is allowed in the drinking water in Europe, and over 3,000 times higher than has been shown to cause harm in Seralini's study. And this harm has been, sex hormone changes and liver and kidney damage. I mean, this is absolutely just outrageous. So we caused a 5-day Call the EPA Day, EPA campaign. This is a month after they didn't respond to us, because the EPA, they're the ones that allow glyphosate to be sprayed on all different kinds of food at very high levels. And in 3 days, the EPA got 10,000 calls from our moms and supporters. Yeah. And it was so great. And on the 5th day, I talked to the director, and he said, "You've got to stop. We have to do our jobs." And I said, "Your job is to recall Roundup, right? When something doesn't do, right? So we're not going to stop." And he said, "Well, we prefer to meet with principals." So I got a meeting with them. I happened to be going out a week and a half later to the East Coast to speak, and so I went down to the EPA, and they had 9 of them and 11 of us. We had a doctor and a scientist and a lawyer. We had a former Marine, and we had a bunch of moms, and it was really fantastic. And the 1-hour meeting turned into a 2-hour meeting, and they were glued to their seats. Nobody left. And there were dads in that room, there was a breastfeeding mom in that room, there was a member of the World Health Organization in that room. And so they did agree eventually, not that moment, but after talking to some senators' aides and things like that, the EPA did agree to analyze glyphosate in breast milk. Now, they say that they will not release those results until they make their decision about whether or not they're going to reapprove glyphosate for another 15 years. And they said that they're going to announce that this week. And I expected them to announce it today. But the EU did say, they announced today, that they do think that glyphosate is a genotoxin, a carcinogen. Now, the EFSRA, there's some other group that said it's not, right? So there's one in Europe that said it's not, and then another that said it is. So, and this one organization in Europe said that they're going to delay their decision until June. So the EPA has already delayed their decision for a year, I think primarily because we found it in breast milk. So we don't know if they're going to announce it this week or not. So since then, glyphosate has been found in soy formula, in Doritos, in soy sauce, in honey, in wheat. It's been found in Fruit Loops. Yes, this is what they give in preschools, you know, for the kids to play with and eat. It's been found in Pediasure feeding tube liquid, which is given to children with cancer because it's loaded with soy and corn and sugar, right? And this is 1,000 times higher than has been shown to destroy gut bacteria in Crusoe's study. And Abbott completely denies this company Abbott. They just said, no, it's not there. And since then, the World Health Organization, an arm of the UN, has declared glyphosate a probable carcinogen. What you do need to keep in mind, and this is what I said in front of the Monsanto shareholder meeting, that you must consider. I've seen, first they said, we have all kinds of safety studies showing that glyphosate is safe. And so I said to him, I'd like to address that. I have done a Freedom of Information Act. Anybody can do this. You can apply to the EPA or FDA or CDC or any government entity or university to get records, to get information that they produce. And I applied for Freedom of Information Act. 6 months later, I began to get the studies that Monsanto submitted to the EPA showing safety. One of those studies showed that shrimp died at levels above 5.2 parts per million. Now, recent studies have also shown that glyphosate stays viable in dark, salty water for 315 days. What's in our womb? Dark, salty water. What's the size of a 6-week-old fetus? It's the size of a shrimp. And I said to the shareholder meeting, you must be responsible for contaminating our mothers and the children and for polluting the planet. You know, why do you think we have the highest rate of infertility in recorded history? Why do you think that this directly correlates with a pig study where 3,000 pigs were fed glyphosate-sprayed grains at 2 parts per million, and their miscarriage rate jumped 30%? Directly correlate. So they must consider what they're doing to our pregnant mothers and our children. Now, I do want to mention a few of the major flaws of the food system, just in case there is a certain area that you would like to go into. One is patents on life. It is absolutely unacceptable that any company can patent life, you know. 2, you know, we know that salt and sugar are in our food. We should know that our food contains GMOs. So labeling is a major flaw. 3, this is a new one that I thought of recently. There is no consistency. If we can do a Freedom of Information Act on a university and get the emails of a professor, particularly Kevin Folta, who's been insulting every, you know, activist out there and who claimed that he wasn't getting paid by Monsanto, and we get to find out that he was paid by Monsanto, right? Because he's a government-funded employee. Well, if we can get information from our government-funded entities, how come we can't get information from our government-funded GMO farming? We fund those GMOs. It's over $90 billion a year. Every single family here, if you've got 4 people in your family, you pay $540 a year on average for GMO farming. You're paying for the planet to be polluted. You're paying for our children to be poisoned. That's your right to know where GMOs, where and when they are. So we absolutely deserve to know where and when they are. That's our information. And number 4, testing. Many of you know that the EPA does not test all of the chemicals in a product. They only test the one active chemical ingredient, and that's absolutely ridiculous. Basic science tells you when you put two different chemicals together, something different happens than just one chemical, right? So that's a major flaw. Number 5 is money in politics. It just doesn't make any sense at all that chemical companies can give money to senators, and senators make our policy based on the chemicals, what happens with the chemicals. That is the money should absolutely be out of politics. And number 6, the GMOs and pesticides are considered a process, not an additive. Therefore, they do not need safety testing and they don't need to be labeled. If GMOs and pesticides were considered an additive, as they rightly are, they are put on our food or in our food, then they would need safety testing and they would have to be labeled. So I believe that's a very important area to go forward in. Now, how are we going to regain health in America? Number 1, if we don't buy it, they can't sell it, right? We need to buy organic. Moms buy 85% of the food. Everyone either has a mom or is a mom. So we really invite you to focus and target on all the moms in your neighborhood and ask them to please buy organic food and tell them about GMOs and glyphosate. But many people say, but organic costs too much. Well, I really invite you to take a look at it. If you buy your own 5-pound bag of organic potatoes, cut them into French fries, and cook them at home, that saves your family of 5 over $917 a year. If you only did this twice a week instead of eating out. And that's just for the French fries. If you buy bulk flours and make your baking mixes, if you buy oatmeal and make your granola bars at home, you can save so much money. It can be even cheaper to eat organic at home than it can conventional foods. So if you think organic food costs too much, consider it. Potato chips cost $8.45 a pound. Candy bars cost $9.49 a pound. And then you have to factor in all of the health issues, the pesticide cleanup, the exports, the loss of exports, the damage to our children's brains and bodies. So organic truly is the real bargain. Now, I know this cost over here is no longer true because we lost between, I think it was 40 or 60 million chickens in Iowa that were factory farmed. None of the pasture-raised organic farm chickens died. I wonder why. Perhaps the GMO-fed chickens in the factory farming that were fed GMO feed, the glyphosate impacted their immune system, and they were affected by the avian bird flu. But the pasture-raised organic chickens were not. So the price of chicken has gone up quite a bit. But it's still a bargain. So what can you do? So we're going to first think about the family, right? So test your water for glyphosate, and you can do that under action. Use a reverse osmosis water filter, which we have shown in some filters to remove glyphosate. But you do need to add a few drops of liquid trace minerals back into the water to prevent calcium chelating. And it's just a few drops. It's not a big deal. You can just Google trace minerals. But please do that as well. And then you can test for glyphosate, fungus, and pathogenic gut bacteria in your gut. You just do a urine test. You go to the doctor and say, I want my urine tested for fungus. It's really important to do with children with autism. You can see this quote here that talks about microbes can be involved in autism as a fungal. Metabolites are often found in the urine of autistic children. Many children with autism respond to antifungal treatment and score very high for yeast and anaerobic. So this just shows that the poor bowel ecology is really so important, and you can absolutely make a difference in your children and in your own mental wellness too. If you feel foggy and irritable and you have memory loss, please look into that. We really must detox, and the number one way is to eat organic, but there are other detox products out there. And keep in mind that 90% of the pesticides have been shown to leave the body in 1 week and 100% in 2 weeks. So there totally is hope. You totally can recover from this, but you do need to add in non-GMO vitamins and minerals. Please be aware that vitamins and minerals, when they say cellulose, very likely could be GMO corn husks or some other GMO product. So you really have to be careful with your vitamins and minerals. You could be poisoning yourself with your supplements if they're not non-GMO or organic. But when the chelating aspect of glyphosate means that you can't just eat organic and expect to have some really important minerals put back in. You might need a boost of those vitamins and minerals, and you might need to supplement for a while to put back in things like vitamin D and B12, which are and manganese and magnesium, which are very important. So number 2, treating the fungus, yeast, and bacteria overgrowth. We did it with a compound medication, but there are holistic ways to do that as well. Number 3, colloidal silver, aloe, and this product Restore that you can find out more about online as well. These restore the integrity of the gut lining, and that network that I talked to you about earlier, this new product Restore is a carbon that comes from miles below the Earth's surface that they say restores the network. So then you don't have to keep introducing probiotics, because if you think about it, if you're always putting in the same probiotic, you're creating a monoculture of probiotics, and you don't need a monoculture. You need many, many different kind of good bacteria in your gut. So there are some really new cutting-edge products out there as well. So number 4, and by the way, I'm promoting that product because I hear such rave reviews about it. I don't personally benefit from it. We will eventually probably sell it on our website because we're having such a crazy, great testimonials from moms. So I just want to put that in there, that we are trying to make more solutions available to moms. So also eating gluten-free, sugar-free, and dairy-free for the duration of the treatment is really important, not to feed the bad, the pathogenic gut bacteria. Number 5, adding in probiotics, preferably in the form of raw organic sauerkraut, kefir, organic kimchi, organic miso, kombucha, or kefir soda water. There's a great website called culturedfoodlife.com. This woman, Donna Schwenk, is just, you would think she's Hawaiian because she's just so happy and spiritual and magical. She's just wonderful. And she has a great website with a lot of easy recipes. And we ask you to please not only take care of your health and yourself, but prevent health issues in your community. And one way that you can do that is by having a movie night or a mom's meetup. And keep in mind that just one person who shares with 15 people, if you have 15 people over for a movie night, and those 15 people go out and share about GMOs and glyphosate with only 5 people each, and those 5 share with 5 people, and those 5 share with 5, then that's 1,875 people who might go out then and spend $200 a week on organic food. And if $100 of that money is spent on local organic food at your farmer's market, that's an injection of $6.5 million a year into your local economy, and over $1.8 billion shift to organic food nationwide. Wouldn't that be great? And that's with only 100 locations. We can absolutely do that. If only 100 people did that, we could cause over $1 billion shift. So another way that we are going to do this is by introducing the message, the right to health, and really taking on life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So I want to continue here a little bit more. I want to share again that I am here to announce and share this new message created by the SHAKA Movement, which is one that we've all been thinking and feeling and yearning for. It's a message that we've all been putting on the back burner while the message, A Right to Know, has burned through millions of dollars unsuccessfully. It's a message that many thought we were not ready for, but we all feel it in our hearts. And I'm sharing this message of the right to health. First of all, why the word right? What does it mean? It's a moral, ethical, or legal principle considered as an underlying cause of truth, justice, morality, or ethics. A right is undeniable, irrefutable, and it's an unequivocal truth. It is not debatable. And it's not right or wrong. It's not even questionable. A right is something that is not earned or paid for. It does not come with conditions or exceptions. And when something is right, a community should not have to fight for it. Right? It is the undeniable right of the people to be healthy. As a baby, we do not know, we cannot choose, and we certainly cannot scan a barcode and find out if a food that we're about to consume is a GMO or not. And yet everyone universally would agree that a baby has a right not to be harmed, assaulted, or neglected, right? And in our civilized, taxpayer-driven society, that's what we expect. Toxic chemicals in breast milk, water, and food, labeled or not, do cause the destruction of gut bacteria, the breaking down of the cellular walls, and in many aspects of harm. They are an assault on a baby's hormonal system and the cell development. Our policymakers are neglecting to acknowledge the criminality of the damage happening to not only our babies, but to our entire population. Human beings in a society set up by the people and for the people have the right to expect their elected officials in their government to protect them. The Hawaiians have a constitution which needs to be upheld, and tonight I'm going to cite the American Constitution, which is being ignored here as well. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it, and to institute a new government, laying its foundations on such principles and organizing in such form as to them shall seem likely to affect their safety and happiness. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Let's look at that. Life means health. Life means not being inundated by the chemicals in our food which destroy life, which kill placental cells, which increase miscarriage, infertility, sterility, and birth defects. GMOs and chemical farming directly violate our constitutional right to life. Liberty means the freedom to choose healthy options in our society. Liberty means the freedom to choose whether to eat GMOs or not, to be able to choose to eat pesticides or not, and to choose to be exposed to pesticides and herbicides in the air or not. We do not have the liberty to choose or avoid the exposure to 80,000 chemicals, 800 which are endocrine disruptors. GMOs and chemical farming directly violates our constitutional right to liberty. The pursuit of happiness means to continually strive and endeavor to enrich and improve our lives in a manner which bring joy, prosperity, and satisfaction. In food, this means access to food that do not destroy our gut bacteria and our body's ability to regulate the very hormones that cause happiness or satisfaction or depression. This means we have the right to eat food which is nourishing, clean, wholesome, and full of nutrients which feed the body and brain, enabling us to make healthy choices which prevent abuse, addiction, depression, and suicide. GMOs lead to a higher exposure to neurotoxins, which impair the ability to make healthy decisions and happiness. Hundreds of thousands now have gut disorders so severe that they can no longer work and pursue happiness, and they go on disability. And the society must support them. Now, GMOs and chemical farming are a direct violation of our constitutional right to the pursuit of happiness. Now, the pursuit of happiness is of particular importance here in Hawaii, where major chemical companies employ your neighbors and donate to elected politicians and police centers. The people employed by or supported by these toxic chemical companies feel that they have a right to the pursuit of happiness by being gainfully employed, and they do. However, they may also feel that they cannot do a different job other than working for Syngenta or Monsanto. In many cases, there may not be one available right now. Their only source of income may be one which is unhealthy. But I believe that Hawaiians and everyone has the right to healthy wealth. If you work for one of these chemical companies or know someone, they may not believe their job is causing harm, but consider that it is. Consider that the very dollar that you receive to build a future of safety and prosperity for your children could be the very dollar which is harming their future. If you are a responsible person, you have a right to be gainfully employed in a position which does not cause harm. And this is where I see we have opportunity. On the mainland and here in Hawaii, I see we have an opportunity to focus on the solutions to create a self-sustaining community by creating healthy jobs and healthy wealth. Many are doing this right now, and I met some of them and interviewed with them, and they're wonderful people. Growing healthy jobs on this island of paradise and protecting one of the most incredible resources of beauty and culture on the planet, I hope will be one of your priorities. Secondly, my husband says that we must stop appealing to the people in power and be the people in power. This means that some of you need to rise up and take the seats in the City Hall and take back the power of the people. Around the world, it is up to us to alter the government by getting to know our council members, going to fundraisers, visiting your senators, and voting out the officials who will not protect the people. It is time for us to get active and get involved in our government. Now, why you? So this story is mostly about mothers, but I invite you to hear the wisdom in the story and look at how the culture is ignoring that wisdom. So in the Native American Museum in Washington, D.C., there's a big, beautiful headdress. And underneath it is a plaque that says, to this day, the Native American leaders are elected by the mothers of the tribe. And the mothers continue to hold the power to remove a leader based on lack of performance. Now, why is that? That is because the community trusts that a mother's commitment is in alignment with the community's best interest, not just their own. So in America and in our society, we have forgotten the wisdom of the mothers. And I believe it is time to rewrite that declaration, including men and women, and rising up in unity, in unison, and having one voice that's united. Now, here's some actions we must take. Call your senators and ask them to vote no on the DARK Act and yes on 511 for mandatory GMO labeling. Also, the FDA tomorrow is the last day to comment on the FDA to vote for to say yes for GMO labeling. They are trying to get QR barcodes on our packages to be the way that they do GMO labeling. That is completely elitist. Not everyone has a smartphone, nor should we have to use one in order to find out if GMOs are in our food. Next, please call the EPA and demand that they revoke the license of glyphosate. This is the phone number for Neil Anderson. He's the director of the Pesticide Review Board. His mailbox will probably be full. It's been full all week. But you can also call your local EPA, and there is a regional number. If you just type in epa.gov and look up regional offices, you can get your regional office. They need to hear from us too. And the exciting thing is that the California EPA is going to list glyphosate as a carcinogen, and it will need to be labeled. So that's great, but they're not getting rid of it. So we do want to encourage all of them to revoke the license of glyphosate. So also keep in mind that you can host an event and get free materials on our website, and all you need to do is, when you post an event under events, it could be a coffee night, a movie night, a mom's meetup, whatever it is, and you get an email with a code for about $125 worth of free materials that we'll send to you. I think it'll cost more to come to Hawaii, I'm sorry, but you can still, it's a lot of great materials. One of them is a door hanger that you can just put on your neighbor's door and let them know about the dangers of Roundup, and on the other side are alternatives. So we have some really great materials for you. I want to remind everybody that, it looks like our food system may be corrupt, but our people are not. They are creative, courageous, and we're making a huge contribution to our communities, and we can create health and freedom in America and around the world. And I want to reiterate again that Hawaiians marching by the thousands makes us think. It really does, and it gives us hope. Your dedication stirs our sympathy. It also, it deepens our dread that what's happening to you might happen to us. But I'm here to say that you are us. This is a global food system, and what is happening is unacceptable. The American government is sacrificing Hawaiians for the favor of the chemical companies. We have to stop this, and we are going to stop this. Now, how do I know that we will? So I'm going to tell you a story from my mom. So it was the first, or about my mom. It was the first day of my son's life in my home, and I'm home with him. I'm holding him. He's wrapped up in his blanket, and he's tiny and pink and fragile, and he weighs almost nothing. But suddenly, he's everything to me. And I look at him, and I'm just in awe. And I say, Mom, isn't he amazing? Aren't all babies just amazing? And she looks at me and touches me on the shoulder and says, we all still are. We all still are. And we can do anything that we set our mind to if we let go of those ideas that we're not, smart enough, or we're not a good enough speaker, or we don't know enough yet, or we don't know how to talk to a senator. You can do anything that you set your mind to. So I know that we will win. I know that we will do this because I see people as amazing. And when you start to see people as amazing, and you start to see yourself as amazing, this absolutely will happen. There's one other great leader, Gandhi, who stood in front of the British Parliament, and they said to him, little man, do you really expect us just to hand India over to you? And he said, yes. And what happened there was he saw his government as an entity that would eventually do the right thing. And that, he saw his government as great, and that made him a great leader. So I invite all of us to not only see yourself as amazing and do whatever it is that you set your mind to, but see other people as great and see them as people that will do the right thing. That is the bridge to having things happen. Now, some people won't do some great things, right? And that is when we vote them out. Okay? I want to reiterate that. And when we get a plan and when we take over, I've heard some great stories about the fisheries here, the farmers, the fish farmers, creating their own rules. There's a story about some grandmothers in Italy that found out that their children in the Italian school system were being fed top ramen noodles in Italy. So they got mad, and they made a plan, and they went into the school system, and they said, everybody out of the cafeteria, we're taking over. And they did. And the whole cafeteria was run by a bunch of Italian grandmas. So, that's what we need to do. And so thank you we need to come together and see ourselves as amazing, our other people as great, keep going in this movement because we all have the right to health. And we will not stop. We will not give up because the love for our children will never end. And yes, and you can count on Moms Across America for partnership and creating healthy communities. I know we can count on you, and together I'm sure that we can do this. So thank you so much. Thank you.